Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the live music integration workshop about how to integrate active listening experiences into your classroom to build community and enrich your students' learning. Hello and welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. My name is Elizabeth Peterson. I am a teacher and the host of the inspiredclassroom.com. I'm excited to be bringing you this live workshop today on Facebook. And so because it's on Facebook, we have the opportunity to chat with each other. And so in the comments, you'll see a place where you can check in. You can say hi. You can tell me where you're from. Go ahead and type a little comment in there. Let me know where you're coming from. You can even tell me where you're sitting, if you got your PJs on, if you got your nice warm cup of coffee, if you're ready for us that way. So also, because we're on Facebook, you can hit any of the emojis at any time. Let me know you are resonating with what we're talking about. You are going to try some of the ideas that I'm about to share with you. All right. And also there's actually, speaking of sharing, there's a spot somewhere on your screen where you can actually share this workshop with someone else on Facebook. So if you know someone who might also be interested in this topic, you can go ahead and tag them in the comments, or you can actually share it to your Facebook page and see who might be interested in joining. So I see that Kelly is here. Welcome, Kelly. So glad you're here today. All right, so let's see, we've got a couple people on. Excellent. All right, so we're going to be talking today about, let me get on the correct screen for you. Hang on one second. We're going to be talking today about what active listening is and why it's a great method of music integration. I love this topic. This is my favorite. You'll find out why soon. We're going to talk about how listening to music is actually like reading. We're going to talk about what music you can actually use in your class. So we're going to have some practical applications here and how to fit this active listening time into your schedule. Okay. SEAL. We're going to talk about SEAL applications, and SEAL stands for Social, Emotional, Artistic Learning. It's a branch of arts integration that is coming out of the Inspired Classroom. It's very exciting. And we'll talk about how SEAL actually connects with this topic of active listening. And we'll also have some ideas for how these listening experiences actually integrate with your curriculum, especially the language arts. But we'll touch on some other topics as well. All right, so this is time for you and me. Okay, to connect with one another and for me to share some great ideas with you. So I really want you to turn off all distractions. So go ahead and, shut off your email. I already did. Go ahead and turn that vibrate on your phone. Get yourself comfy with your screen, and we will be ready to start. And actually, I'm going to take myself off this too, because I think that might actually be a little distracting for all of us. So if you are ready to roll, I see Jen is here too. Good morning. I'm so glad to have you both here. All right. So let's get started. I know that some of you maybe already have downloaded the freebie that I've been sending out in the emails after you registered. If you haven't yet, you can still access it. I have it available to you on the inspiredclassroom.com/get set. It has some information that we're going to actually be talking about today. If it's not printed out yet, don't worry. You can do that later. I want you to stay put and hang tight and be ready for this morning's workshop. And let's see. So my promise to you is that I'm going to give my best for the next 60 minutes. So I want you to be right here. I'm going to give you some ideas that you can use, because my intent is always to give some practical and applicable ideas for some true arts integration. All right. So you are in the right place right now if you're intrigued by this topic. Maybe you are interested in music. Maybe you really love music, or you're just curious to see what role it can really play in your classroom. Maybe you're a music teacher. If you're a music teacher, go ahead and hit the like button, if anyone in here is, because this approach to teaching and learning about music can certainly work for you as well. In fact, I was a middle school music teacher for 7 years, and I absolutely used everything that I'm about to talk to you about with active listening in my years teaching music, as well as my many years in the classroom as a general classroom teacher. You may actually feel a little nervous with this. Maybe you don't feel so confident in your musical knowledge, or you just don't know where to start. Well, I'm going to take care of you as well. This is not a real intimidating approach to music integration, and if you're ready to try it, it will certainly meet you right where you are. You might actually feel that you're excited. In fact, I hope that there are some of you who are just plain excited about this possibility. So if music is your jam and you are just plain ready to see the possibilities that lay ahead, this really is for you. So regardless of where you're at, if you want to write down number 1, number 2, number 3 in the comments, you can let me know kind of where you're at. You're intrigued. Maybe you're a little nervous. Maybe you're excited. Go ahead and put a 1, 2, or a 3 right in there. Now, let me tell you a little bit about myself. So, I've been teaching for now over 20 years, and these strategies that I'm about to share with you have been with me since the very beginning. Actually, you could say before I even started teaching, because I started to develop these strategies as I was researching how to integrate what I really, really loved, music, into my student teaching. And I had the best student teachers, those cooperating teachers that really supported and actually encouraged me to try out some of my ideas. And now 20 years later, I'm teaching in a 4th grade classroom, and I use these ideas still. I haven't stopped because they are just so beneficial to myself and to my students. I also love working with other teachers, and I've been giving workshops and hosting retreats now for about 12 years. And I love that teachers are so intrigued by the arts and intrigued by music and really, really want to bring these experiences into their classroom because they know it works. They know it works. And I bet you do as well. Thumbs up, right? Now, there's something I want you to keep in mind while you're here today. And that is that you deserve to carve out time in your schedule, in your school schedule, that is meaningful and musical, interesting and integrated, and for you and for your students. Now, oftentimes people can just dismiss experiences such as what we're going to discuss today as fluff, something that can just be taken away. But I want you to remember, the experiences you bring into the classroom can help you tread to learn and just get your curriculum done, or they can inspire your students. And I want you to have that renewed feeling of teaching something that will truly enrich your students' learning. And I really believe that many of you will find that in today's workshop. So we're going to get started with what I'm calling starting points. These are great places and things to think about as you're starting to bring active listening into your classroom. So first of all, what is active listening? Well, active listening is when your brain is active, okay? So you might be listening to the intricacies of the music. You might be thinking about the instrumentation, what instruments are actually being played. and why. You might be listening intently to the melody or even trying to hear some of the underlying harmonies in the music. You might be paying close attention to the lyrics and trying to find that meaning behind the lyrics or even in the instruments. And you're constantly making connections. So this is where listening in this way is just like when you read. Okay, so if you think about how you read and how you teach reading, there are things that you do before you read, during, while you're reading, and after you read. Well, this approach to listening, this active listening approach, is really set up the same way. You're going to do things before you listen to music, while you're listening to music, and after you listen to music. And when you do these three things, you are succeeding in true arts integration. And in this case, music integration. So let's take a look at an example. And for our first example, I'm going to bring one of the greatest here, Beethoven. So this is the Symphony Number 3. It's called Eroica, by yours truly, Beethoven. And before listening to the piece, students should really know a little bit about Beethoven, which some of them will be familiar with, at least who he is and his name, and the circumstances surrounding this symphony. So I'm going to give you a concise summary of that. So Beethoven lived in the time of the French Revolution, and he himself was a man who believed in the ideals that many revolutionaries did: freedom, equality, and justice. Well, one man that Beethoven admired was Napoleon, who strove to uplift the common man. And to revere him as a great general and as a person, Beethoven actually wrote the Third Symphony and named it after him. However, after finding out that Napoleon proclaimed himself emperor, Beethoven decided against it, believing that no man should do such a thing. And he actually ripped up the title page in a fury of his symphony, and he renamed the piece Eroica, or the Heroic Symphony, and dedicated it to the memory of a great man. Isn't that a fantastic story? So the symphony actually consists of 4 movements or sections, and the whole thing is 45 minutes in length. That's actually the longest symphony that had ever been written to that point. Now, because of this, you would need to decide on what parts you would want your students to focus. You only want to listen to probably about 2, maybe 3 minutes of an excerpt of this symphony, because your students' listening stamina is probably pretty low. And we're going to talk about listening stamina a little bit later in the workshop. So let's take a little listen to the Eroica Symphony, and let me know how the volume is for you. So that's just a little snippet of the symphony that I wanted you to just have a little listen to. Now, during the listening experience, you would have the students listen and to how the music maybe portrays heroism and other values that are implied during a revolution. You could ask some open-ended questions concerning the music and get students' opinions about it as well. For example, you could ask something like, what instruments are being used and why? What was Beethoven trying to say or portray in his music? What adjectives describe the way the music is played? You could even ask about patterns. Are there any patterns in the piece? And then you can even take it a little further and ask something like, what are some modern songs that have been written in response to national or world events? And of course, there are very many on that. And that's what it was about, connecting this with reading. You're asking students to make connections, make inferences about the music, just like you would about a story or a book. Now, after you and your students have listened to the piece or, the excerpt a few times, give them a way to reflect on the piece of music. So this is where the integration can really come in. This can vary depending on what skills you want your students to develop. So you may want them to, for example, write a letter to Beethoven or Napoleon. You could have them write a music review for a newsletter that's set back in 1804. You could write a journal entry that addresses some of the open-ended questions that I gave as suggestions that you would discuss with your students during the active listening experiences. Or you could allow them to draw or write about the music itself. So this is how arts integration, and in this case, music integration, is very differentiated. You can take one piece of music, and then depending on what you're going to do with your students, it naturally becomes differentiated because you can allow the experience to meet your class where they're at. So students could also, for example, respond and interpret the music in an artistic way. For example, they could create a dance or a skit that expressed the emotions and the values that were heard in the music. So do you see how there are just so many possibilities here with active listening? With this example, go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you can start to see how this kind of can play out with your students. Or give a little comment. All right, so now let's move on to the next starting point. And this is a really important one that I want you to fully take into consideration as you're considering having active listening be a part of what you're doing. And that is that active listening helps build community. This is probably the best benefit that this can do for us, especially as our students' needs are changing. So there's a great quote by a guy named Bobby McFerrin. You may know him as the guy who wrote and recorded the song, Don't Worry. What is it? Don't worry, be happy. Yeah, that's the one. Don't worry, be happy. And his quote is this: no art form creates community as quickly as music. And now notice it didn't say as well as music. It's as quickly as music. Something I've observed in my classes over the years is that there's a certain vibe in the room when students are listening, really listening, actively listening, that is, to music. Why is that? Well, of course, I have my own ideas on this. And one of them is that music seems to just be all around us. So it's something that's familiar to nearly all of us. Even if you're listening to something completely new, the idea of music and sound is still embedded inside of us. And nearly everyone has a starting point or a set of experiences with music, if you will, that they can bring to the table. So when a group of students is allowed the opportunity to listen together and discuss the music and offer what they bring to the experience, a community naturally starts to build. And this community can be a small group community. Maybe you work with a small group of students. Maybe you have an entire class. You're the general education teacher. Maybe you only see your students once or twice a week or once a day because of the way your schedule is and what your position is in your school. But no matter what, that group of students that you share these experiences with are going to naturally start to build a community. And of course, the more you do this, the greater the connections are going to be made. So I want you to think of active listening and providing for an experience like this as a field trip, because it really is like taking kids on a field trip. It goes on those same points that we want when we bring kids somewhere on a field trip. It gives students a common experience. It gives the class something to share together and discuss. And this is my favorite, it builds SEAL skills. So let's take a look at some of the SEAL applications that are embedded in active listening. So first, we've got self-awareness. Now, self-awareness is being able to identify your own emotions and be aware of how you feel about certain things. So to give you a little illustration of this, I have a excerpt of a piece called April in Paris. It's by the Count Basie Orchestra. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to just have a little listen. Oh, I had the volume down, sorry. There we go. So one of my favorite questions to ask after we've listened to a bit of a piece of music is, how does it make you feel? What emotions are in the music? So you can kind of take it at those two different ways. How does it make you feel? Or what emotion do they think the composer or the musician is trying to portray in the music? And this is a great opportunity to really talk about different emotions. And you can even pull out an emotion wheel and kind of really look deeply into this. You can take it as far as you want. Now, when I played this song for my current class, what I do, this is a really simple thing that you can do with your students, is as we're transitioning out of active listening time and back to our, or into our next thing, I'll have them take a moment, grab a whiteboard marker, and just write down how that piece makes them feel. And so you can see their little brainstorm here up on the screen. And what I'll do is I'll either leave that up for further discussion if I'm going to use it again later in the school day, or I'll do what I did here, which is actually I took this picture so that I could show it on my projector screen the following day so that we could then further discuss it the following day. And you'll see that they have a range of emotions and some that are very similar. And that's actually what the next SEAL application is, and that is it brings a sense of social awareness to students. So when they see, I'm going to go back here for a second, when they see that some people have similar reactions to this piece, and yet some people don't, and that's okay, and discussing that a little bit. So for example, one student thought that this was calming. They felt calm when they heard this. And then another person, it made them feel bouncy. So those two very opposite things. While in other cases, there were a lot of people where it just made them feel pretty happy. So it's a great discussion starter about how people are different. And you're recognizing that, and you're acknowledging the differences and the similarities among your peers. It's a really powerful message that you can actually show great examples of through the music in quite honestly, a very non-threatening manner. So active listening time really also helps build relationship skills. While you're discussing things like your emotions or your ideas or your interpretations of the music, you're starting to develop clear communication with one another. You're also practicing turn taking in just a different atmosphere than what might be your normal part of the day. And you're also respecting others' opinions, because undoubtedly when you're listening to music, people are going to have a variety of opinions, and you have to show respect to that and acknowledge that that is just plain okay. All right, so let's see how you're doing here. Give me a thumbs up if you're still with me and still ready to roll, because now we're going to get into the practicality here. And the first thing is all about picking out music. And I'm going to give you some helpful hints for this. And the first one is so plain and simple. You're ready? Start with something you enjoy. Don't feel like you have to go searching for something really lofty. This is the best way to get your students interested. You're going to start with something you enjoy, and then you can tell them about it. You know, like, what part of your life does the song come from? Is there a story that goes with it? How does it make you feel? I remember way back in the beginning of me all doing this, I was actually choosing pieces that I really, really loved, and I ended up using them in my wedding ceremony. That's how much I enjoyed it, and that's a nice story for me to share with my students before I play it with them. So it doesn't have to be a classical piece or even an instrumental piece. You can work towards that if that's something you desire, but it could be just a song from your childhood or something that was popular when you first started teaching, or a song that just brings back a good memory. So I do suggest that you start with something that's not really familiar to your students. Now, something might be somewhat familiar, like if you're playing a Beatles song, or you're playing like Beethoven's Für Elise, they're going to have heard something about that at some point, and those are great places to start. But what I'm really saying here is, don't start with pop music and stuff that they're already listening to. I don't recommend that, because that's something you can invite them to do later, maybe as time goes on and you've actually built a good foundation of active listening. But I would suggest not starting with things that they already know. After all, your job, right, as their teacher, is to expose them to new things and open their minds to new opportunities. And so that is a great way to make it happen. So in the comments, I want to hear from some of you. What song or piece of music might you start with? When you start with something you enjoy, and that feeling is going to translate into your students, and they will catch that excitement from you, and they'll be willing to give it a try. So I can't wait to read what some of you guys are saying. Now, as you're putting those things in the comments, I'm going to give you a couple of hints when you are picking out music. So the first one is to start short. Keep in mind that your students probably don't have a very good listening stamina, especially if you're having them listen to something that's not familiar to them. So you want to start short. Now, here's how I often will search for pieces that are short. And I'm talking maybe 1 to 2 minutes long tops, at least to start with a new class. Now, what I do is I go into my iTunes and I sort my music library by time. And a lot of things pop up. Now, some of these things are things like sound effects and crazy things that I happen to have in my library. But I find some gems in here as well. For example, this one that I've highlighted is called Rising Sun, and it's by Glenn Frey. It was on a CD that I got many years ago. Glenn Frey, you may know him from the Eagles, and after the Eagles, he went on his solo career, and I got this particular CD for the song, The One You Love. Loaded it up into my computer, and to my surprise, there was actually this 38-second instrumental that was kind of interesting, and it really does lend itself well to active listening. I'm going to have you take a little listen. I'm going to check my volume first before I press play. And that's it. That's the whole piece. It's just this little simple interlude, I guess, in between some of his other songs on the CD. And so I use this song for some movement. you can get them to actively listen to it and then transition it into something that they could use in transitions, for example, or a stretch break of some sort, or maybe how you begin your class time together. So this one, I like using a mirroring activity where students are paired up and they face one another, and one student moves in, small movements, large movements, and whatever that person does, the partner who's facing them mirrors them. So if one person is raising their right arm, the first person facing them is moving their left arm, and they're just moving together. And you can use this for some really good movement breaks, and also for that active listening part and trying to figure out, how does this make you feel? Why would this be a good piece of music to play at the beginning of our lesson to get us ready? So there's a lot of applications here. Now, you might not have this song, but search your libraries. Grab some of your, if you have CDs, grab some of them and check out the timings. That's how I started picking out some great music and discovering some great music. That was only a minute, 2 minutes long. So there's going to be something in your music library, I'm sure. All right, and the other thing is, the other helpful hint, listen to an excerpt. So if you have a piece of music, like I saw that Kelly would like to start with something from the Nutcracker, terrific. There may be some short pieces that will work perfectly, but if there's something that's a little too long, have an excerpt. And for the excerpt, I'm going to suggest that you actually fade it out instead of cutting it short. And here's what I mean. So I just changed the screen on you, and I'm going to just play this Beethoven again and just show you very briefly fading out. So it's really important that you slowly and steadily fade out the song. So here I've got it on a slide. And that way it doesn't really matter where you are in the piece to fade it out. It will just naturally, fade out instead of just abruptly stopping it. Because when you abruptly stop something, it causes a great distraction for your students. When you fade it out, it just melts away. So that's a good helpful hint to just keep in mind. All right. So I did see that some people were given some good song suggestions, kind of going on what interests them and what they might want to do. All right, excellent. Oh, good, Jen, you were lost there, but you're back. Terrific. All right, great. And I'll enjoy looking through that a little bit more. So I hope that you are looking at other people's suggestions too, because we get great suggestions when we share together. All right, now the other practicality thing that we should probably go over is this, finding time. Now for this, you really need to just figure out what works for you. And once you find out and figure out what works for you, go ahead and put it in the comments. Again, this is another way, if you share what you're thinking, it might help another teacher who's also here listening and watching. All right, so here are some quick suggestions, and then I do have one thing that I should address as far as finding time. So start of your day, or this is a great strategy to use in morning meeting. Snack time is what I do with my students, because this is a consistent time every day. It gives me a good 15-minute block of time where I can just gather the kids together. We can, eat snack together and listen together and talk. So when you're trying to find the time, it can be as short as 5 minutes. It really can. It can just be 5 minutes. It can be 15 minutes. You could take a whole 40 minutes if you want, but I'm pretty sure everything that you can get done in 15 minutes or even a little bit shorter is going to be just enough, because you're not going to do it one time and forget it. You're going to do it repetitively over the course of a week or 2 weeks, or if you are really ambitious, this might be a thing for you that you actually do throughout your entire year or for a season. So we'll talk a little bit about that later as well. Another great time to find this 5 to 15 minutes is after lunch or even after recess. It actually helps you to transition into the next part of your day really well. Another one is at the end of the day. This is a great thing too, because you could be finishing your day, get the kids packed up, and then have some time to just diffuse them, calm them down before they head off to dismissal. Now, also, if you just have them for a class period, the beginning or the end of the class period works as well. So what time of day might work for you and your students? So go ahead and start putting some of your ideas in the comments, and we can see what you guys are thinking. Now, I do have a question that I often get, and that is, what if I only see my students once a day or once a week? So if you're if you're a specialist or a unified arts teacher and you only see them for once a week, or you're teaching in a middle school model and you only see your students one time per day, one suggestion is the beginning of class. And this is often, like I've said, I think before, a great way to transition the students into your classroom and set the tone for your lesson. So as they're coming from the hallway or from another classroom into yours, you can group them together, get them set, get them listening together, build that community, and get them set for your lesson. It's also great at the end of your class. You know, it's a great reward for good behavior and for getting through a lesson and having that 5 minutes at the end to kind of group them together before you send them off to the next thing. The other thing you can consider if you are planning to create a musical integration lesson with active listening is you can use class time to listen to the piece that you're integrating. So for example, if you teach ELA, you can use some of your class time to actively listen to the music before you start writing the story or the poem that's inspired by the music. So then it's not just for community building or transitioning your students into one thing or another. You're actually using the music to integrate into your curriculum. So use time in your class time to do that. Here's another example. Let's say you teach history. Build time into your class period to listen to music appropriate to the time period you're studying, and then discuss it. So don't just play the music. Don't just play music from Mexico because you're studying Mexico. Build in some active listening time so that your students are really looking at what that Mexican music sounds like in the instrumentation and really appreciating it a little bit more. So again, what is going to work best for you and your students? All right. Oh, good. I see that some people are really getting in here. Yeah, so Kelly is a special ed teacher and she has her students in small groups for only 30 minutes. And we have a lot to do because I have to follow IEPs. Yeah, so you know what? If you can, if you see your students on a regular basis, Kelly, what you can do is introduce the idea of active listening. Even just tell them what the title is or give them that background knowledge on one day. The very next day, say, hey, I know that you're excited about listening to that song. Now we're going to do it. And listen to that excerpt of the song. It might be 2 minutes and get their first impressions and you're done. And then the next day, do that same type of thing. Have them come in, listen to the song again, have them write down 2-3 words that comes to mind. Maybe you focus in and say a part of speech like, I want you to give me just a verb. Give me 3 verbs that go with this piece of music, and that's it. And then the next day you build on that. Now give me 3 adjectives that come to mind when you listen to this piece. And every day you're starting your lesson with like this quick little warm up, almost like your own version of morning work. Quick little warm up before you get into your lesson. And it just keeps things rolling and gets them in there. And who knows, maybe, just maybe, it will allow your students to get excited about coming in and getting there on time because they don't want to miss their active listening time with you. So let's keep on going. I'm going to get to some of your other questions, I promise, at the end. So integration ideas, let's get into that. So How about some social studies? I'm going to skim over these because I think I've addressed some of these already. The cultures, I mentioned something with Mexican music. Also think about time periods in history that you might be teaching, or important events in history, or even holidays. Okay. Science. I have a couple of examples with science. When I teach land and water to my students, I often carve out some time for active listening, and we listen to things like Handel's water music, or there are some great jazz blues songs like the Basin Street Blues that address water in the Mississippi River, and even the flood that happened, I believe, back in 1939. Of the Mississippi. If you're studying planets, there's a great symphony by Gustav Holst that every section of the symphony focuses in on a different planet. I mean, how cool is that? Excuse me. There are many pieces of music that have animals. So if you're doing anything about animal adaptations or studying different types of animals, there's music out there. A quick Google search will probably get you very far with that. Now, as far as language arts, oh my gosh, there are so many ideas for language arts. It can inspire different poems or stories. You can have students, this is a good one for upper elementary and middle school, writing your opinions about music, the music that you're listening to, or even a compare-contrast. I've done that a few times where they're actually comparing and contrasting to composers' music or just two pieces of music. And also word work, like my suggestion to Kelly, having having your students listen to music and then having them focus in on verbs that come to mind or adjectives that come to mind. Here's a couple of examples. These are from second graders. My goal for them, my objective was in language arts was to get them to write sentences and use proper capitalization and periods, and to get them to talk about the music itself and use some of the music words that we were using while we were actively listening. So here's an example from Mozart's music and Bach's music. And this comes from a couple of middle school examples where we listened to two different pieces of music by Frédéric Chopin, who exclusively composed for the piano, a prelude and a waltz. These are two beautiful pieces of music if you want to Google them or search them on YouTube. And this particular boy wrote a poem for each. And so his prelude, bolts of lightning everywhere you look. Scared should be. I love that. So poetry is a terrific way to just get started and get some interpretive poetry for music. So here's the question. Do you see how powerful it can be to actively listen to music in your classroom with your students? Give me a yes or a thumbs up if you can definitely see where this can go for you. So yeah, excellent. I see them. I see those thumbs up. Terrific. So here we are. And you have showed up today, and I'm so excited about that, even though you're super busy. But you came here for a reason, and maybe it was because you're intrigued by music and you know that music is powerful and you think listening to music could be a great way to integrate. Thumbs up if you agree. You're ready. Maybe you were once unsure about how to start. You had no idea what I was going to start talking about, but something drew you here, and now you have some great starting points to get actively listening with your students. And hopefully you are excited. You can see that there are so many possibilities with active listening in the classroom. So at this point, you really have two ways to go after this workshop and after you've gotten all this information that I've given you so far. You can give it a try on your own and see how it goes, or you can let me help you implement these strategies, and I can help you step by step. Well, if you're ready to continue on this journey, with me to implement these amazing active listening strategies, with me guiding you along the way, I want to introduce you to check out my book, Inspired by Listening. It's a complete 172-page resource, and it gives you everything you need to bring active listening strategies into your classroom. So teachers have purchased this book and had great success. And the best success stories, though, I gotta say, come from teachers who don't just buy the book, but they also take the workshop that goes with it. And the workshop is generally a day-long workshop, and it incorporates teacher-centered professional development, something that the Inspired Classroom is all about. I'm all about teacher-centered. However, it's hard to give these workshops, well, since I'm a teacher as well. So I'm really excited to let you know, that I've created a video course where I personally take you section by section through the book, just like I would if we were in a live face-to-face workshop together. I'll teach you all the strategies from introducing the idea of listening to music into your classroom, all the way through the detailed integration lesson plans. I've got performance assessments and all the background knowledge you'll need to know. So let's take a look, and I'll let you see what's inside this Inspired by Listening book and video course. So it's 7 units total, the video course. It starts with Unit 1. I'll walk you section by section through the book so you can be super successful in your implementation. Unit 2 starts with the 3 types of listening experiences. So I'll give you the 3 types. We'll get you detailed information. There are so many small activities you can use in your classroom to build students' understanding and engagement and interest in listening to music. And I'll walk you through the 2 lesson timelines that are detailed in the book. There's one for general teachers and special ed teachers, and there's one specifically for music teachers. Unit 3 is how to conduct the actual active listening experience. That's that 5 to 15 minutes you might take to listen to a piece of music with your class. And in that section, there's also many mini activities that you can use with your students during their active listening time. And of course, in the spirit of teacher-centered PD, there's an opportunity for you to try these activities out as well. And there's so many reproducibles that I'll walk you through that are included in the book for you to use with your students. Unit 4 is a detailed walkthrough of all the integrated lesson plans. So I have so many included in the book. There's 7 of them that are extremely detailed so that you can step by step walk your kids through things like writing stories, writing letters, creating monologues, all kinds of different things. And of course, there's producibles for each and every single one of those lesson plans that are in the book for you to use and copy and use with your students. There's also a performance assessment on listening, and this is a complete performance assessment that's ready to just be copied out of the book and given to your students. It's a great way to assess student listening skills, as well as give them some practice in research and literacy skills. It is certainly naturally, again, differentiated so that it can take your students, regardless of what grade they're in, as far as you want them to go, or as limited as you need them to be. So I even give you the rubrics to grade these performance assessments, and there's different levels of the assessments you can use depending on what grade level you're teaching. In Unit 6, we tackle music background knowledge. And in the book, I include information on 16 composers and musicians, information on genres of music and musical elements. This is something that's really for your reference and for your students, and you can photocopy any of the pages with your students. There's also a complete composer project that's just ready to use. It's actually set up as a collaborative project for students to work in groups and kind of focus on their strengths depending on what part of the project they're going to do. And it also includes reflection sheets and rubrics for their assessment. And there is also in the musical background knowledge a complete musical genre project, which is ready to use with reproducibles and even some exemplars. In Unit 7, this is the point where we are finishing and we're celebrating, and you can print out your certificate for going through the entire video course, just like you were at a workshop face-to-face for 5 PD hours. So, of course, I've had many teachers over the years who have gotten the book and even taken the face-to-face workshop with me, and this teacher, Jenna, is a 7th grade language arts teacher, and she used my book mostly for grammar. And she said, teaching the parts of speech in my language arts class can often be a grueling and difficult task. I've used the tools from Inspired by Listening to make grammar exciting again by incorporating music that the kids love. And, you know, that's the thing about bringing music into your classroom, regardless of how you use it. Many of your students, if not all, will naturally have a love of music that will certainly work to your and their benefits. And this, Judy is a former professor at Simmons College, and she said, whether you teach social studies, math, English, or all three, Inspired by Listening shows you how to integrate music into your curriculum with easy to create lessons for students of all ages. All you need to do is create the mood, whether it's a rainy Friday afternoon, Monday morning, or better still, every day. And what she would do is the students that graduated who had worked under her, she would always buy them a copy of Inspired by Listening, which I thought was very, very sweet. Now, one of the coolest parts about active listening is that parents love it. Nearly every year I get comments, emails, or notes like this telling me how active listening experiences have really been a remarkable addition to their child's education in my class. This parent, Kathy, said, I'm very impressed with the attention spent on listening to and learning music in the classroom. My son likes to select music to listen to and sits in our living room while actively listening. I am amazed at how well he remembers songs. See, doing this type of thing with your students kind of sets just something is different, and the students really, really connect to this. So here's the thing. I do these activities in my class. I'm a teacher, and year after year, I see so many benefits in my students. Sure, I see the pressure. I feel the pressures of curriculum and state testing and the time. But I give myself permission to do it, and I really never regret it. In fact, there are sometimes weeks or a couple of months or seasons that might go by that I'm not doing active listening, and I do regret it. Because when I bring it back into my classroom, the kids are excited again. They love doing it, and there's just so much to gain. So the time it takes is so very much worth it. And I do it for myself as much as I do it for them. And you know what? I think you should too. So to remind you, Inspired by Listening has everything you need to implement all the strategies, and the cost is $24.95. But actually, because it's Music in the Schools month, March, the price comes down to $20. So there you go. This book is wonderful, and I promise you, if you buy it and read through it, you'll see so much success in your classroom. However, I do have to say that if you're like me, you will get the book and then maybe not read through it quite as effectively as you might if you had someone helping you through the content, right? Thumbs up if you agree. So that's why I created the video course, which is modeled after the very same day-long workshop that I give teachers to just get acquainted with the book, taking you section by section through everything. Now, of course, paying to go to a day-long workshop would be $100 easy, and not to mention the price of gas and lunch and time it takes to get to and from the workshop. So you might be asking, well, what if I have questions, and how can I get them answered if I'm not at a face-to-face workshop? Well, I've got you covered, I promise. I want you to be successful. right? That's my investment in you. And so once you sign up for the course, I'll make sure that you get the support you need along the way. You'll get access to the Inspired Classrooms closed Facebook group where teachers are sharing ideas and inspiration and stories. And you'll also get my direct email so that you can contact me anytime with your questions about active listening. I don't want you to get the course and then be left alone. Like I said, I want you to be successful, and I will certainly do all I can throughout the process. So you probably are thinking, Elizabeth, what is it really going to cost me for the book and the video and all the support? Well, you know that a day-long workshop that includes a complete resource book like this can easily cost about $125. Plus, you have to think about the price of gas and the travel time and getting your own lunch, and that can start to get pretty pricey. But I certainly don't want to do that to you. I want you to feel taken care of. I love teachers, and I want you to be successful with learning and implementing these strategies. So I want you to have the whole package, the book, the video course, the constant support from me for $57. It's important for me that this is affordable to you. So you'll get the book in print sent to you, and you'll also have instant access to the video course that's worth 5 PD hours and the ongoing support through your journey and implementing active listening strategies. So if you're ready, you can head over. The place to go is theinspiredclassroom.com/IBL for Inspired by Listening. So here we are. If you have questions about this, you can go ahead and start putting them in the comments. We're going to get to some live Q&A very, very soon. I just want to take you for a super quick walk through the process if you're interested in getting this, okay? I'm going to be really quick. If you go to that website, then I said theinspiredclassroom.com/IBL, you'll go to this and you'll have to put the thing into the cart. You'll get an order received payment confirmation, and then you'll get an email letting you know that you are set to go. So you can pay by PayPal, credit card, purchase order is fine. And when you are adding it to the cart, you're also going to be just creating an account with the Inspired Classroom. If your payment is in the form of a check or PO, it won't officially be a complete payment until I actually get the payment in the mail. But once your payment is complete, meaning you paid by credit card or PayPal, or once your check or purchase order is received, you'll get an email like this that gives you immediate access to the course. And your book is also going to be shipped to you, but I'll make sure it gets in the mail the very next day, I promise. And once you're ready to log in, here's the login page. You can also go to that, you see that circle button on the side. That button is on every single page of the website. You can just click to that and you'll get to your login page. And once you're there, you're ready to go. You'll be in the members area, and you'll see your avatar, and you'll see the course, Inspired by Listening video course. And once you click on that, you're going to head off and get started with your welcome video and all the other units and lessons that are included to get you through all of that book. All right, so just to remind you, if you're ready to get started, you can go over to theinspiredclassroom.com/IBL. So I want to start into some questions. And before I get into some of those ready-made questions, I want to just take a quick look and see what you've got. How do you introduce active listening to your students? I see Kelly has that question. So what I go through in the book, there's a whole section on actually how to do that. And you start by talking to them about what the 3 types of listening are: passive, responsive, and active. And then you do some of the mini activities that I have in the book. You can photocopy them. Some of them are just little blurb ideas of how you can do that. And you get them into the idea of what active listening is and why it's important, and how to hold yourself, and how to sit, and how to listen, and how to, take a nice deep breath before you really get started. And go from there. And there's actually some activities to practice that. And there are some like little worksheet situations that you can read with the students and talk about how this student actively listened, or maybe they were listening in a different way, and just bringing to their attention the different ways that people listen, and then focusing in on actively listening. All right. Okay, so Jen is a preschool teacher. Oh, this is terrific for you. So with your situation of teaching in a preschool, this active listening, same thing. You'll introduce it to them, but in different ways, and maybe their interpretations are going to be more full body kinesthetic. So you may have some discussions, but then you can also branch this into them interpreting the music that they're listening to through movement, and through drawing, and through some other types of visual art. So that's some great great applications for littles. So that's terrific. So I have another question. I use it when the kids get rowdy and need something something to calm them. Excellent. So so when you're actively listening to with students, you can bring to their attention how the music really does make them feel, and start having conversations about what types of music can help calm you, what types of music are going to get you really rowdy, and what are some good choices that we could make throughout our day to help us. So you might say, when we are ready to, when you're first coming in the morning, what music do you feel is going to match what you've got? And maybe what music can we start to play and draw our attention to get us ready for learning? So using the active listening time as a self-management tool, another SEAL application, to get them to be aware of how music makes them feel, and how to then start picking music, or why you're picking certain types of music to help them to get their bodies ready for learning. You got some great questions. I hope you keep them coming. I'll stick around for a bit of time. Here I am again. All right. Since we're doing our live Q&A, I might as well be live. Kelly also said, I would love to find ways to connect music with a story we are reading, or introduce a writing piece. I have used music while they do independent activities, which isn't often, but they aren't actively listening. And you are nailing it on the head, Kelly. That is correct. What you're doing is you're using music as soundtracking. So that's passive listening. That's setting the tone in your classroom, allowing music to just melt in the background, and help to just create this really nice atmosphere of learning. And they aren't listening to music. So you're correct there. So this will be a whole different way of introducing music into your groups, into your students' repertoire of learning strategies. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to start to introduce them to this different way to listen, this active way where your brain is active, not your body, and how you can start to build from those experiences into writing a piece, writing a story, writing a poem, writing a retell, whatever it might be, writing a paragraph with a main idea and details. All this is addressed in the book. And those exact ideas that you look like you are wanting, those are all detailed in the book about how to use those active listening experiences and then start to bridge it into their writing. So that's great. I'm glad you're thinking that way. This is my biggest concern about integrating music because I'm a special ed teacher. Oh, I've already addressed that. Excellent. All right, let's see, any other questions heading up? So there were a couple of other things that I think were, oh, if you already do have the book, there is an option to just purchase the video series. And so I know that there's a lot of books out there that people already own. So I also made it available as just a video series. But you do have to understand that the video series cannot stand alone. I don't provide any resources online. The resource is the book, and it's a big book with a lot of pages of content and worksheets to reproduce and all that kind of thing. So they really do work hand in hand. You can't just do the video series. And if you don't know that much about music, well, I think I've addressed that. There is an entire section about musical background with biographies of composers and musicians, information about music itself. I've got everything covered. The last thing I want you to do is to buy a resource and feel like you just don't know where to start or you don't know where to get the information. I made this book to really have everything inside of it so that you are never at a loss of what you need and what you need to do. That was my biggest intention, to have it all right there. So again, if you are interested and if you're ready to enroll and to see what this book and this video series can do to change your teaching and to enrich your students' experiences with you, go ahead to theinspiredclassroom.com/IBL. I'm going to take a quick look over at the chat and just make sure that I haven't missed anything. I know there are a couple of DMs. Oh, someone had asked on a DM right before we started, are you going to get a certificate for today's workshop? Absolutely. I will send one out to you within the next 24 hours or so. So that you'll have a certificate for this workshop. And I know who's been here, and I think it's terrific that you're here. Let's see, any other DMs? Okay. So, yes, here we go. How long will it take to get a copy of the book? I promise you I will get it in the mail by the next day that you put your order in. So it usually takes about 3 to 5 days to get to a place. And then another one that I had here, what if my students don't like the music I pick out? They will, because you're going to prep them for it. You're not just going to play a song and say, hey, let's listen to this song today. You're going to do some prep work. And that prep work might take a little time, especially if you're only going to do it in snippets of 3 to 5 minutes. Or even 10 to 15 minutes. You know, you're going to prepare them for this important part of the curriculum that you're now doing with your students, actively listening, and you're going to then prep them for what the song is that you're bringing to them. You might tell a little story. You might tell them how it makes you feel. And sometimes I even will say, we're going to listen to something that maybe you've never heard, or maybe you're not going to like it first, but I want you to be respectful. I want you to pretend like you're at a concert, and I want you to respond respectfully and give it a chance, because, and I'll even say this to them, my job is to expose you to new things and to open your minds. So here we are. I'm going to open your mind to a new piece of music. So I think it's all in how you prepare and introduce things to your students. All right, I think I have one more DM here. Whoops, that's the wrong place. Okay. No, I think that I got everything. If I miss someone, I will certainly go ahead and respond to you. Always, I will always respond to you. You can go ahead and keep putting in comments here. This video is going to stay on Facebook, and I will also give you some replay links probably tomorrow, along with your certificate if you were in attendance. And yeah, I think that is about it for today. So I just want to really thank you so much for being here today. It really means a lot that you are ready to experience music integration, specifically active listening with your students. I can't tell you enough how much this is going to do for your students with their own enrichment, with the enrichment of your curriculum, and especially building that community and building relationships within your space. That, I think, at this point in education is probably the most important thing for us to do as teachers. And I know that active listening can play a part in that. So thank you again so much for being here. If you're ready to get started with me as your guide, I would absolutely feel honored to be able to do that with you. You can go to theinspiredclassroom.com/IBL. IBL for Inspired by Listening. I hope you got a little bit of an inspiration today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope to see you soon. I'm Elizabeth Peterson, and goodbye for now. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.